Move this clock. 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 Ninety-four. 94, 94, 94, 94, 94. I'm
Yeah, you see my screen.
you can see it
There
there.
we go.
There we go. I bet we're good to go. Now,
Alan said we're ready to go.
okay, thank you, Mr. Schmaltz and Catlin. Appreciate that. We are back online, chugging away. So with that, commissioners, presume we had a chance to review the prior meeting minutes. If so, I'd look for a motion to approve or amend, please.
Moves to approve.
Thank you. Is there a moved and seconded, prior meeting minutes to be approved as presented? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Mr. Capitan, well done on your first vote. Keep it going. All right, with that, we have the order of agenda. I did have an amended item, which was on the consent agenda. Let me get it here. Yeah, so my apologies for that. This was a COVID grant that we have a very short timeline on. Otherwise, I would have asked them to wait. I don't have it. I hope you've had a chance to review that. But with that, I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended with item number I, COVID emergency supplemental funding for the sheriff's office.
L.
Oh, is it L?
L.
Yes, and no.
JKL. Got you. Thank you, Commissioner Steen. With that, look for a motion to amend, please.
Move to amend.
Second. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Commissioners, assume we had a chance to review our prior submitted consent agenda. If so, I'd look for a motion to approve or any questions that are outstanding.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherling. Is there a second?
Second as amended.
Yep, moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Breitling,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Steen,
Yes.
Capitan,
Yes.
Sherling,
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion passes. Now it's time for public comment. Open the floor if you are not on the agenda. Address the commission for 2 or 3 minutes. Don't see anybody running to the microphone here or virtually. Double checking. Nothing. So with that, regular agenda, item 1, MetroCog. Mr. Altenberg. Saw ya. There you are. Mr. Altenberg, welcome to the courthouse.
Thank you. Thank you for your time here today. I'll try to share my screen.
If you are online and not speaking, please mute your line so you don't have any echoes. Mr. Altenberg, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
We can.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump into it here. The Northwest Metro Transportation Plan, the study that was completed in partnership with Fargo, West Fargo, and Cass County, with additional guidance from Riley's Acres, Reed Township, and other stakeholders. And at its core, it's intended to be a guidebook to get ahead of some of the growth pressures that we're just starting to see in this area. As of today, most of this area is undeveloped. You have less than 3,000 people living here, fewer than 4,000 jobs, most of which are concentrated in the areas that are currently incorporated by the cities of Fargo and West Fargo. So there's a 3-step process that we took as part of our technical process. First was developing and refining some land use assumptions to better understand what types of development might occur in the sub-area, both short and long term. Next, we analyzed what transportation improvements would be needed to accommodate this land use. And then finally, we discussed and analyzed a few different transportation scenarios, mostly so that our different study partners could be in agreement about some of the improvements to start planning for. So starting with land use, this is the proposed land use plan our team developed with blue for industrial uses, red for commercial, and then the yellow, orange, and brown representing different intensities of both residential and mixed residential and commercial developments. And what I'd like to do here is just highlight a couple of key locations within the sub-area. First, in the northeast, we have a lot of short-term industrial growth that's expected along 40th Avenue North, which puts focus on some short-term needs along this corridor. To the southwest of there, we have an existing rail line that bisects the sub-area at an angle, and our team looked at integrating a diagonal road that complements the existing rail line and also accommodates industrial land use in this area. Another key benefit of this is it helps to keep traffic off of 45th Street north near Riley's Acres. If you keep driving north, it just turns into a gravel road. There's not a lot of room to build out additional capacity on that roadway. So this diagonal roadway actually helps to alleviate some of those potential traffic impacts to Riley's Acres. Next here, transitioning over here, we start to see some higher land use intensities. These are areas identified in West Fargo's comprehensive plan as future growth nodes as the city builds out and as it decommissions its current lagoons in the area. And then finally, here's the Raymond interchange at 38th Street, good access and connectivity to some dense commercial land use. We wanted to translate some of the different land use intensities that we're using based on examples that we can find here in the metropolitan area. So this one example that's highlighted here shows that what we've identified as low intensity comes from real examples in Fargo and West Fargo that our study team envisioned for the future of the sub-area. With that, I'll note that the projected full build comes out to about 57,000 new residents and 90,000 new jobs, but this is decades in the making, likely looking at a timeline at 50 plus years before that full build out occurs. So next, transportation system assessment. With the land use plan that we developed, we translated what that would mean in terms of traffic over the next decades. What you can see here is some of these purple, red, and orange roadways signify some pretty high traffic numbers, actually higher than what you could find in the metro area today. Of course, this isn't going to happen in the short term. Again, looking at a 50-year plus time frame for some of these capacities to emerge.
Mr. Altenberg, question?
Yes.
I'm sure it's in here, but I just couldn't find it.
Yes.
Using as a multiplier for the rate of growth.
The multiplier for
So like population growth, are you using a 3% increase a year? Are you using, what are you using for that? How do you contribute? How do you figure your rate of growth? This may be a better question.
So what we did is with the land use, we started with the full build out. With the land uses, we can plug in population and traffic numbers of that. And then from there, we just stepped it down to a 50% build and a 25% build. We don't necessarily have a time frame for some of those builds. We kind of leave it up in the air, just dependent on how fast different portions of the sub area in fact does grow. But at least with this, we know what we could expect with if the land use were to be followed, we would have an idea of what those population and employment numbers are going to be.
So in theory, this could actually accelerate. I see a data 45, but in theory, like down in Horace especially, with the right infrastructure improvements down there, Horace could explode like in about 10 years. So that's a possibility too, although this is projected out, like you said, 25, 30 years. But if it accelerates, then this is what it will be as a projection.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's one of the recommendations at the very end is just to continue to monitor that growth in order to keep ahead of that, those development pressures.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, welcome. Traffic operations model. This helped us to start to refine how many lanes of capacity are going to be needed, what kind of traffic control methods are going to be best be utilized. What we found here is that most of the north-south corridors here can remain 2 to 4 lanes, and by doing that, we're better able to implement potential roundabouts, which allow for better operations and safer conditions. Last, with the transportation system assessment, our roadway infrastructure model looked at what this will cost and what the overall investment for roads and utilities needs to be. This graphic here shows it would take nearly $375 million to build out this entire area. Again, this is full build, it's decades down the road, and it's possible that only a fraction of that investment is going to be needed in the next 5, 10, possibly even in the next 20 years. Again, it's really just kind of dependent on how fast we start to see some of those growth pressures emerge.
Thank you. Commissioner Sherling, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. So have any of these, have you taken into consideration any type of a bypass, you know, along the diversion channel?
That's a very good question. MetroTalk is going to be starting interstate operations analysis here in 2021. So we noted that as part of this study, part of the Northwest study, we noted that that's going to be a future planning project that's going to be starting up likely in the next couple of months, and that's really going to do more analysis about a potential bypass in the area. So, sorry.
One of the things that came up when we raised the speed limits on some of our county roads recently is that, you know, your phone apps will take the speed into consideration. And so if you're driving from Grand Forks to Bismarck, it would take you around the metro area onto some of our county roads. And it would be interesting to see how that impacts going right, you know, through I-29 and over to 94, and then versus what a bypass along the ditch would do for those numbers. And so anyway, that was a consideration that some folks brought up to us during our public meetings about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. Thanks.
Will do. Thank you. Back to this graphic here. I guess I was pretty much done with it. It's again, probably won't see this full build for decades, and just a fraction of some of these investments here in the coming years. We also wanted to ensure that this study thought about multimodal needs, including pedestrians, bicyclists, transit, as a way to move through this area. So the study provides examples of roadway types that correlate with some of those expected traffic volumes that can best accommodate those multimodal users. Last phase I'll talk about is the scenario analysis. So the first scenario we looked at is what we're calling the Southwest Gateway. And we wanted to look at ways that would allow better connectivity to some of the higher intensity land uses in the area. This is near the Raymond interchange, but what we began to do is look at how the main avenue and I-94 interchange could be reconfigured, and then utilizing one or several viaducts over the rail line in the Cheyenne diversion. So this concept may better visualize what that's looking at like here. You can see it would require some major investment. and there would be impacts to some existing land uses right now. But what we found is that when we modeled this in the traffic model, we saw that this would be incredibly beneficial to the overall sub-area. Really has some good cost benefits in terms of travel time and miles traveled. And our study team agreed that it makes sense to at least take steps to keep studying this, and maybe down the line to take steps to reserve right away for a concept like this. The next scenario we looked at is what we're calling a modal split, on how people get from one place to another. Historically, majority of people in the metro area drive to and from work, and traffic forecasting exclusively looks at that. However, when we compare the entire metro area with an area like downtown Fargo, we see major discrepancies in that modal split. And with some of the higher intensities that we are expecting, that our study team thought to include in this sub-area, we start to see more people using alternative modes of travel. And also, let's see, with the impacts of COVID-19 in the back of our minds, we modeled this scenario with a 13% reduction in the amount of traffic. And we found that by doing this, we're able to reduce 8 miles of overall traffic capacity, which goes a long way to enforcing comfort levels of people walking and biking, as well as providing cost and health benefits. And one final scenario I'll touch on here is we looked at 40th Avenue and County Road 20. We elected to look at this a little deeper because we expect a lot of short-term growth, and also realize that we're likely on the cusp of a variety of different capacity and traffic control needs. So we delved a little deeper along this corridor and found that right around 2045, it's expected that additional capacity will be needed along this roadway, going from a 2-lane to a 4-lane. However, before that time, there may be the need to add better traffic controls at key intersections, especially on either side of the interchange, I-29. And what we found is that roundabouts would function well and operate better in terms of traffic efficiency while providing better safety as well. And there's more details in the report, but these are just some of the highlights for this scenario that we looked at. So in conclusion, the study, again, at its heart, is really meant to be a guidebook for future planning studies as this area slowly begins to urbanize. In the meantime, it's important to keep the lines of communication open with the different jurisdictions involved, continue to monitor and manage that growth, and also to preserve critical right-of-way. Study also recommends that we continue to refine some of the major concepts, including that interchange at Main Avenue and I-94, to better understand the overall cost implications when it comes time to allocating funds for these improvements. So that's a very quick synopsis of the study. I'll be happy to take any additional questions at this time.
Mr. Altenberg, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Altenberg? All right, sir. Did a good job. No questions.
All right.
Appreciate your time. Glad to see us grow and glad to see somebody paying attention as we grow.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Item 2 on our agenda, review and approve request. Cass County Joint Water Resource District, Mr. Dodds and team. I know we've gone through this before a number of times. We've got a new commissioner. We've got some new faces, but I think, and you said we have no owners or representatives?
I do not believe we have any owners or representatives. I don't know that for a fact, but that's.
Say without objection from my commissioners, if you could expedite your explanation as you've given us in the past. I think with less people on the docket, no owners in the room. Make it quick.
Yes, sir.
But still be professional, Mr. Dodds. And Mr. Frederick, I think he's on too, right?
I'll take that to mean you think I've been professional in the past, which I appreciate.
Stellar in the past, as has your team, and you know that, and I'm
Yeah.
not kidding.
Yeah.
Given the scenario we've been presented,
Well,
a heck of a lot worse.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson and commissioners. Congratulations to the new commissioners. Glad to see you here again today. This is our 9th visit in front of you. Today we have one parcel, one action for your consideration. As consistent in the past, just a real brief recap. I know Sean and Dan are on. Maybe I'll give a high-level summary and see if there's any need for any more details after that. The Joint Board, as you're aware, is a member of the Diversion Authority along with the County Commission. The Joint Board has the responsibility for acquiring property for the project. In doing so, they hire appraisers, they hire negotiators. My team helps manage that process. By and large, we've been able to reach agreement on the majority of parcels, but as you've seen over our last handful of visits, there's some where we have not been able to reach an agreement with the property owners. We are following a statutory process outlined through the North Dakota Century Code that dictates how water resource districts have to do business. In particular, that process is related to the quick take eminent domain, which we also call as last resort eminent domain. In 2017, the legislature revised the law so that it's very much a recipe driven, where you take a step and you're required to wait a period of time, and then it authorizes you to take the next step, and then you wait a period of time and you take the next step, and so on and so forth. You have a packet of information related to the parcel in your agenda today. This is a 34-page packet that includes all of the official correspondence sent back and forth from the Joint Board to the property owner. I think our request here, and consistent with our previous requests, is that the County Commission judge whether or not the Joint Board has followed those statutory steps. There's an outline of those steps in the first few pages of your packet. On pages 2 and 3 is the outline of the steps that are required by the Century Code along with the requested motion. I think the evidence is in front of you that we have followed those steps. So that would be the action that we'd be asking of you. Maybe before you consider taking that action, just a few points about this parcel in particular. On page 5 of your packet is a map showing the parcel. This parcel is impacted by the diversion channel. You can see that it's a parcel that is bordering the Willow Creek development. And so there's some neighboring houses and development just north of this parcel. This parcel, the southwest corner of it, is clipped by the diversion channel. As usual, we did have this appraised. The appraisal came back at roughly $22,000 an acre for the just under 3 acres of taking, and as well as a small sliver of temporary construction easement. The property owner had made a counteroffer, essentially at double that price. That counteroffer was reviewed, presented to the Joint Board, and declined back in October. In the grand scheme of things, we're not talking a lot of dollars, but the Joint Board has been trying to hold the line on percentages above the appraised value. And so that's where I think the Joint Board's perspective is that we have an appraisal done that really sets the barometer for what the property is worth in terms of market value. And of course, there's some negotiations above appraised value. In most cases, we're in the 10 to 20% above appraised value, but the Joint Board has been uncomfortable settling at prices that are double the appraised value. And so because of those negotiations haven't been able to reach a mutual settlement, we are here in front of you today to ask for essentially one of the last steps in the quick take process, which would be authorization from the County Commission for the Cass County Joint Board to deposit the amount of the appraised value with the court. I breezed through that, hopefully not too quick, but about as quick as I could have. I know Sean and Dan are with us, as well as Ken Helby with the land agent. We're all here happy to help answer any questions.
Perfect. Dan, let's go with Commissioner Capitan first, and then we'll jump to your consent.
Just a question for you. You stated it was $22,000 an acre. You meant 8,000, didn't you?
Correction, sorry, Mr. Captain. Yes, $8,000 an acre. The 22,000 large would be the.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobson, anything to add, sir?
No, not at this time, Chairman Peterson.
Thank you. Mr. Fredericks, anything for you, sir?
Mr. Chairman, brevity is key, so unless the commission has any questions, I'll save my report for next meeting.
Outstanding. Any questions for Mr. Fredericks while we've got him here? If not, Commissioner Breitling.
Not a question, but just an explanation. On page 30 of the document is a list of contacts, and just so everyone understands, you see the capital letters LM, that's left message.
Correct.
So if you're wondering what that stood for, it's simply left messages for the landowner.
Yep, that's correct. Page 30 is the contact log from our land agent to the property owner, and so you can see we've been communicating, or at least attempting to communicate, for over a year. Had some conversations, but again, haven't been able to negotiate the deal.
If you were to summarize how this relationship's going, can you give me the basics? Are they non-committal? Are they just disinterested? I see one offer.
Yeah.
16, yeah, counter offer 16.
Yeah, so a couple things. If you turn back to the map, the property owner at one point wanted to sort of do some swapping with what we need on their parcel with something on an adjacent parcel. And I think if we had owned the adjacent parcel, and if that portion of the adjacent parcel wasn't needed for the project, we probably would have considered that trade. But in this situation, you know, first off, we don't own that adjacent chunk. And I guess if I can just scribble on this map here to illustrate, sorry for those that aren't in the room, but the parcel to the north, you can see where the cross hatching, if that were to connect up with the triangle piece on the southwest corner of 9749, you can see that there'd be a sort of a remnant that maybe wouldn't be needed for the project. Unfortunately, that remnant is needed for the project, but that was the parcel that they were thinking about swapping. And so there were some conversations in that regard to maybe do some land swap. We don't yet own that piece, and so we can't hardly trade it if we don't own it. But even if we did own it, it is included in the work limits for the project. And so kind of a two-strike type situation there. So I think there's been some negotiations.
That's what I was looking for, Mr. Dodds, just to know if they're communicating with us or anything else. Commissioner Capitan.
Commissioner Peterson, another question. According to this map you have, there are some buildings included in this?
There is a building that's not impacted by the project, but there is a building on this parcel. Looks like several buildings.
Several buildings, it looks like.
I have not been out to that property myself. I know that the appraiser has, and you know, of course, the land agent has been part of that. Given the buildings are not impacted, I guess they haven't really been a major part of the conversation.
Okay, so they're not being involved in the taking?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to authorize the Cass County Joint Water Resource District to utilize quick take eminent domain section 61-16.1-09 sub 2 of the North Dakota Century Code to take an easement for a right-of-way and temporary easement regarding OIN 9749.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded? Second. Commissioners, any questions? Any discussion? Any discussion? Looking for Commissioner Sherman. Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Breitling?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Steen?
Yes.
Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Dodds and your team, thank you much. This will be less and less every meeting. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe just a few comments on that. We have one more set of parcels that we know are scheduled to come in front of you on January 19th. Those are, we hope, the last parcels for the channel. There's another group of parcels that we have agreed to terms, but we're struggling to get ink on the agreement. And so we're still carrying that one through the steps, but I'm anticipating getting ink on the agreement before we would have to bring it here. And then just as a heads up, that concludes the channel, and it concludes I-29, and it includes Southern Embankment Reach 1. So those have been the focus areas. Now we've been working to start appraisals and start offers for the Red River Control Structure and Drain 27 wetland project. And so those are in the informal negotiating stage, and too early to tell whether we're going to have, wild success or, rampant visits with you coming forward. So I guess we'll keep you apprised of that. Obviously, we're going to work hard to strike a deal. I know on the Drain 27 wetland project, for example, the appraisals are coming back at a rate or at a value range that is indicative of transitional development land. And so it's significantly higher than just farmland, which we're not surprised at. I think those values were expected from our budgeting standpoint. And so from that perspective, I'm hopeful we're able to reach agreement with property owners, but again, the time will tell. So just a heads up on that.
Perfect, Mr. Dodds. And again, your team, thank you. And look forward to being done with this, but we realize it's a necessary thing. So
Thanks for your time.
all right, thank you. Item 3 on our agenda. MOU, Mr. Benson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is the first of 3 MOUs that you'll be seeing with the Diversion Authority over the next several months. And this one really focuses on the stormwater diversion channel and associated infrastructure. So in layman's terms, the P3 portion of the project, the channel starting from south of Horace, wrapping around Horace, West Fargo, Harwood, and then to the outlet northeast of Harwood. Over the last several months, we've had a team of county officials, including Commissioner Breitling, Robert Wilson, Birch Burdick, Robert Valley from the State's Attorney's Office, and Matt Stamness from the Engineering Office, and myself work with the Diversion Authority staff in developing and refining this agreement. At this time, I think we've gone through this in depth, and I feel very satisfied that we've got a good agreement with the authority. I know on the line is Joel Paulson, Executive Director for the Diversion Authority, and I would ask him to make any comments as well.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Mr. Chair, if I may.
Welcome, Mr. Paulson. Yes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to the new members of the Cass County Commission. We look forward to working with all of you. This document before you is indication of that. This document, as Mr. Benson had mentioned before, has really been vetted through a number of different individuals, contains a plethora of obligations that the Diversion Authority has to Cass County as we move forward with this important project. And I think this is just another small milestone and a very successful year. As Mr. Benson had indicated, we'll have others that will come before Cass County Commission related to the other structural components of the project. But I would like to just congratulate the Cass County team for the hard work that they put into finding resolution with this memorandum of understanding. And I think with that, both Mr. Benson and I are available for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I might have a couple of questions, but the first one I came across is on page 14 of the MOU. It's section 306. I'll give you guys a chance to get there. And then what I was thinking of, give me some examples of what this may or may not be when we talk about betterments that the county is going to be responsible for. I want to know what the tolerance is going to be of what a betterment is versus, we're just replacing the bridge, basically, or something like that. Does that make sense, my question?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Steen, one of the things with this agreement, it doesn't get into some of the very technical details that are also included in the P3 request for proposals and the technical requirements that are laid out. So these betterments would be additional changes to those bridges beyond what is in the technical requirements for the P3. Say we were to add additional lanes to widen the bridge. added, added a new bridge crossing. So with that, that's where,
If I can interrupt
yeah.
on that. So Jason, then if it's in the P3 bidding documents, if it requires I'll call it a 3-lane or a 4-lane, and we only have a 2-lane, that's not our request for betterment, correct? That's part of the bidding process and the authority's request or need. I'm just trying to get at all this, a 2-lane bridge with no walkway. Well, now we're putting in a 2-lane bridge with a walkway. Whose betterment is that? The authorities or the counties? I'm just curious as to where this is all going to get billed out at.
So I think it really comes down to, once, if it's beyond the scope of what's in the P3 technical requirements for each specific bridge, that and as the county, we are asking and are interested in making the betterment, then it's on us, and that's what that portion of the agreement is for our desires in benefits, in betterments. If the diversion authority sought to do some sort of betterment for whatever reason, then that would be something that they would pay for.
So we have an opportunity to review all the, if it's a bridge, I use bridge because that's the easiest thing for me to think about. Reconstruction or construction of a new bridge. We have the opportunity to take a look at that and say whether or not it actually meets the service of the old bridge, and if we want to improve it, or if it's already been improved by the bid proposal or the bid request. I'm just trying to understand here, Jason, because who would request these betterments? That the county would have to pay for separately.
Right. Thank you, commissioners. I think I've got a clear question. So yeah, it would be the county, because coming out of the P3, we've been very involved in the technical requirements for what each bridge needs to look like and what is allowed for the P3 teams to do it in their construction. So, once those bridges are in place, they should have a 70+ year lifespan. So it would be any changes that, as the county, say we wanted to, add an additional lane because of growth 50 years from now, that would be on us. But we are fully involved, and we are vetting any requests through this P3 iterative process for requests for various styles or adjustments to the bridge requirements. And so and we're also working with the North Dakota DOT and our consultants to make sure that when it comes to bridges, which are really primarily the biggest portion of all of this agreement, is that that's the most costly portion of this project in regards to county infrastructure is these bridges.
Okay, so my last follow-up should be easy then. So in the specs that we've worked through to date, have we identified anything in the specs that's been identified as a county betterment?
At this time, there's nothing that's in there that would be a betterment that we would pay for, Commissioner. It would only be beyond, once the P3 contract has been executed and the P3 team that's selected begins construction, if we were to go forward and make a request after that, that would be the betterment. Anything that gets worked into the agreement during our over the next 6 months as we're going through that. But really, we shouldn't be adding any betterments right now at this point, because we're locking in this P3, the technical requirements and the RFP. Joel, I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
No, I'll just add, Mr. Benson, that, yeah, we have vetted everything that's contained within the technical requirements of the P3 developer through Jason's office, and we have agreement on size and use of all of the infrastructure contained within the project at the moment. Maybe I'll just throw out an analogy for Commissioner Steen. Right now, say we're considering a gravel road as part of the project, not building a bridge, say 7-8 years down the road due to growth and development, as Mr. Benson had indicated, the county chooses to take over that township road and pave it and request a bridge to be constructed. We would still be in the middle of construction. There could be some cost benefit to the county to utilizing the developer's contractors in implementing that new bridge. That would be an indication of a betterment. But just to reiterate, as Mr. Benson had indicated prior, there are no betterments contained right now in the project as it sits today.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. Just kind of to follow along with Commissioner Steen, did we put in there that we would have bike lanes in anticipation of a recreational plan later on, that we would make sure that those bridges, I'm thinking specifically in the Horace area, were going to be wide enough to accommodate that? And is that already in the plan, or would that be a betterment later?
Yeah, Commissioner Sherling, right now there are several bridges that we've looked at having a bike lane on the bridge. Not all of the bridges have that in the technical requirements, but several around are close proximity to Horace, West Fargo, and on more key paved routes. The routes that are further to the north that are on gravel roads wouldn't have that. And we also anticipate that most of those bicycle and pedestrian facilities would be on the inside embankment, so you wouldn't necessarily have to cross over the bridge to get to those facilities. So that's why we've really looked at just some key paved roads.
So there would be no anticipated additional cost to the county down the road for any of those components. Would that be correct?
Not for anything that's been included in the current technical requirements. Now, say for example, northwest of Harwood on Cass 32, which is a gravel road. Now, if 40 years from now we paved that road and there's a desire to have a bike path along that bridge, then that would be something we would have to add on and would be a betterment. But at this time, and I can't remember offhand which routes it is, but I want to say I think County Road 81 north of Harwood, County Road 10, and then I think maybe County Road 17. There may be one or two. I just can't remember offhand which bridge locations we've indicated to have a bicycle facility on the bridge.
And that's already included in the P3 bid?
That's in the P3 bid and the technical requirements.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any further questions? Commissioner Steen.
I do have a couple more, but I'll kind of walk through these and sorry to hold everybody up, but on page 17, section 410, this is the only place I saw this in the agreement, which I thought was interesting. On basically the last paragraph as it relates to the rest of 410, says if the authority elects not to exercise an option due to the lack of funding, the authority in the county will work in good faith to determine and secure another source of funding for the construction of the crossings in County Road 14 and 52. These are like referred to as, I think, defined alternate township crossings, whatever. I mean, I think that's the only place I saw in this agreement that says, well, if we don't have enough funding, we'll do something else. So,
Yes, Commissioner Steen,
I'm not aware of it, so maybe just a brief explanation what this is all about.
right, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Steen, coming out of the last legislative session, we were short funding, and so to continue moving forward with the P3, we knew there were a few things that we had to put into alternate, basically an alternate bid with the P3. We anticipate we will get fully funded, and of course, we've got the upcoming legislative session that, and I think Joel could probably talk on this a little bit as well. But with that, there was two bridges, one the 52nd Avenue Bridge, and then one County Road Bridge, County Road 14, that were slated to be alternates or options to the bid. And if we have the funding, then we would expect to get those constructed as part of the overall P3. But if we weren't able to get all of the funding, then we would have to look at alternate sources of funding and come back and construct those through, at a later time. Joel, I don't know if you had anything else on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may. Mr. Benson's absolutely correct. So we contemplated those two bridge crossings as an alternate to compensate for the lack of the $122 million in intent that we did not receive, but did request in the last legislative session, along with a couple of other, avenues to either defer costs or push costs into later years of construction. We do fully intend to engage the North Dakota legislature this year in an effort to get the full intent necessary to cover all elements of the project, including these two bridge crossings. But for the sake of this MOU, we needed to consider how we would deal with the situation of not receiving that intent, because it's not it has not been approved by the North Dakota legislature at this point. So that's really what section 4.10 is contemplating. And so I hope that makes sense. Certainly answer any additional follow-up questions concerning that.
So I'm going to cut you off, Commissioner Steen, for a second. So are they in the base bid, or are these alternates?
These are alternates.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Steen, continue if you have questions.
So these are alternates that we need to have done, just a matter of it didn't fit based upon the funding. That's what I recall.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner Steen. Without that intent that we did not acquire in the last legislative session, we had to contemplate how to deal with that through this project. The only external things that could really be removed that aren't absolutely necessary for permanent reliable flood protection are the bridges, unfortunately. And so these bridges were chosen just based off of traffic patterns and uses and anticipated growth. And they were set aside as an alternate in order to deal with that lack of intent from the last legislative session.
Are these add alternates or deduct alternates? Just curious.
They'd be add alternates.
Okay, thank you,
Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Steen, one of the challenges right now is we've got the legislative session coming up, but at the same time we have to move the P3 RFP process along so that we can bring that to conclusion and select that firm. So this is one of those balances that we've had to strike to in this kind of in-between time.
Yeah, keep going, Commissioner.
And thanks, Jason. You clarified it for me about the first sentence you started with your answer. It has to do with a $120 million shortfall, and then I got it. But okay, figure that out. The next one I have is question is on page 22. It's the paragraph right above Article 7. Is it pretty typical that we would be responsible for all costs with removal of excavated materials? I mean, I don't in my mind, I can't even think of how much this would be, but it's, you know, hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of something somewhere. And so this isn't part of the construction project, so the county is responsible for that directly? Of removing that debris?
Commissioner Steen, you said, section 7.
Well, it's right above section 7 on page 22. That last paragraph, right before section 7, or excuse me, Article 7.
All right, yes, Commissioner. So that's referring to these extra material piles. And because so much of the 55 million cubic yards of clay that have to be excavated for the channel are really just waste, because we only need so much on the inside embankment as part of actual flood protection. So the majority of the embankments on either side are just, you know, spoil banks for that material. So what we've done is, at key locations for the county and for township uses, we're going to stockpile clean, you know, good clay that can be used for future requirements or for future uses. And so that's what this is in regards to. So if from the county's perspective, we're going to do a future road project, say 2035, and we want access to one of these excavation extra material piles, we could go in and get that material to help build our road at no cost. We would just have to follow the stipulations and then make sure that it's you know, graded back into position and seated. So that's what that's regarding.
Road builder, but how far does 500,000 cubic yards of material go?
500,000. I'm guessing that would be, we would be able to, you know, widen a gravel road, and you know, 24-foot gravel road, widen it out to like a 36-foot paved road for, you know, several miles would. We could use that type of material to fill in several miles of shoulders.
That makes sense, Commissioner. Basically,
Well, I understand, but I was wondering if there's a huge cost for this removal, or if we're truly going to be using it. That
clean borrow site is all.
And Commissioner, this site will be there whether we need it or not. So we figured we might as well have access in case we ever do need. And this is also available for the townships and the city of West Fargo. For example, West Fargo is looking at using some of this material to fill in their old lagoons as they decommission their lagoons.
I think the question essentially, Mr. Benson and Mr. Paulson, was, is this enough borrow pit to last us 550 years? Or is it just one big road project? Again, because we don't know cubic. Follow logic behind there. Well, yeah, 650 years of spoil. Let's not do that. It's a bad idea. But if it's, you know, one season or 5 seasons, well, then heck, it makes some sense.
It's also the economics of hauling. You know, if we have a road project west of Castleton, it's not going to make sense to haul this material when we could just get it from a nearby field.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Commissioner Steen, anything further?
One last one.
Absolutely. And then Commissioner Capitan.
Page 29, Article 11. You know, I see this is probably one of the more important pieces of this MOU, the reimbursable cost piece. We have a system in place where we're actually going to be able to track all of our time and effort and costs. We can bill back to the diversion authority. I mean, this isn't something that just sits around, and because this is going to be, you know, we're going to have pieces of time from different people. We've got a cost accounting issue. I mean, we've got all sorts of things we need to track here. This adds up to a fair amount of change, I'm guessing. And so I'm just curious as to what systems we have in place at the county that we're going to be able to track this.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Steen, we have the capability to do that right now. We can track, you know, our personnel hours, equipment hours on each piece of equipment. And we do that right now if we work with, say a local township has their motor grader operator get sick and we go out and assist them in road maintenance for a month or something, we would bill them out using that same cost accounting system. So I think we have the ability to track that through our system. And as I know the finance office is looking at, what replacement software may be out there in the future, and whatever future software we would look to have that as a requirement to be able to track hours of personnel and hours of equipment and costs.
And I figured that per the equipment type hours are easy to track, but I'm thinking about all the non-equipment hours. There's a lot of review of specs and a lot of different things here that are also included. I just want to make sure we're set up to recover that. Because Jason, your answer is exactly what I kind of expected. I know he just dumbed it down for me a little bit. It's easy to track machine hours and who's on the machine, but what about all the other time and effort to do the rest of what's required under this MOU? That was my real question. Are we set done?
And Commissioner, we do also track our engineering hours by project. So we can go and I can look at all my engineering staff, how much time they've put into, say, the County Road 10 project out in Castleton this year. And then I do foresee that, for some of the very specific things that we don't deal with within our county engineering department, that we would need a consultant engineer for, those billable hours would be tracked, and then basically we would just submit that billing to the diversion authority directly.
Thank you, I'm done.
All right, Commissioner Capitan, you're good?
No, mine were answered.
Okay, Commissioner Brightling, please.
Just a point, I believe, and Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but the water resource boards already have that in place and already bill some of their costs to the diversion authority. And at least that's my understanding. Is that true?
Commissioner Brightling, yes, I'm quite sure that they're doing that as well right now for their time that they're putting into sending out certain, meeting information, and some of the costs in past efforts where they've done mass mailings. A lot of those costs are billed back to the diversion authority.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anything further?
Chairman Peterson,
Commissioner,
served on the study group that came up with this MOU. I feel a little uncomfortable in making a motion. I think it should be other commission members who do so.
okay, going there. Commissioner Capitan.
I move that the Cass County Board of Commissioners grant approval of the memorandum of understanding, or the MOU, with Metro Flood Diversion Authority for the design, construction, and relocation of road facilities in conjunction with the stormwater diversion channel and associated infrastructure for the Fargo-Moorhead Metropolitan Area Flood Risk Management Project.
Is there a second, please? Second. Moving second, any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Looking for there she is. Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Sherling,
Yes.
Brightling,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Capitan.
Yes.
Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you. Mr. Paulson, of course, thank you to you and your team as always. Look forward to working with you in the future with that. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Item 4 on our agenda, Commission per Diem Policy. Mr. Wilson, you can take this one, or yeah, you take it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. Congratulations to the newly elected and re-elected members. During the budgeting process for the 2021 budget year, commissioners, you indicated and allocated funds for a per diem policy in addition to the base salary. And I think your well-founded reason for doing so is the level of work that we ask of the five of you in the course of doing this job is substantial. And so this was just a way to recognize the effort that is required of our county commissioners. And so we have been developing a
a draft policy of how we would implement this per diem policy. And I've reached out to some colleagues in other organizations that have somewhat similar policies, reached out to a number of you individually about what you would like to see in this policy, and the draft policy that you're looking at here, and I would ask you to consider after you have a chance to ask questions, is the result of that process. And if you go to the second page here, I can read it line by line, but essentially we're asking you to consider a per diem policy that envisions a per diem payment of $100 per day for days that you attend, participate in, travel to from scheduled meetings for all boards or committees assigned as part of commission responsibilities, other than Monday related board meetings and committee meetings. Legislative travel, conference travel, and attendance is paid as per diem days. Scheduled or impromptu meeting with staff or constituents would not be paid as per diem days. And referencing a conversation you had just a little earlier this afternoon with at the zone board meeting, per diem would not be paid under this policy for work related to the Cass County Zone Board activities. Now, that the reason it's worded that way is that you would be those of you who are members of the zone board would be paid on that under that policy, and not excluded from receiving that reimbursement. For tracking purposes, the commissioners will submit information electronically for days eligible for the commission reimbursement. I'll review those and direct payroll to process the payments, and then there will be a record that all of you can view of what rate are those per diems being utilized. And there was one last line in here that came about really with some discussions of, the line non-official, non-noticed meetings related to official responsibilities are per diem reimbursable if the duration is an hour or longer as reported by the commissioners. And what we were getting at there is a number of you where you serve on a board and that board may have a set commission or a set meeting day. You may have some leadership responsibilities on that board, and there may be some planning activities there where, if you're there, or say you're on as an example, the finance committee for the diversion authority. If there's a setup meeting or you need to understand a particular contract or an expenditure, you have a meeting there, it goes longer than an hour. It's not an exact science, but we were looking for some vehicle to recognize some extended lengths of meeting time there, but also sort of have a cutoff between, well, is a 5-minute phone call versus an hour meeting. How do you make that determination? I'm going to end my comments right there. I understand Chair Peterson wanted to follow up. Yes, the last one's the most important part. So I used an example when Mr. Wilson and I were talking about this. So most of you are aware I'm on a roundtable phone call at least 3 times a week with our friends regarding COVID in terms of both mayors, all our administrators within the cities of Fargo, West Fargo, as well as leadership within Cass Lake Health. That's not something that this would count for, because it's generally a 15-minute phone call. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer depending upon the circumstance, but that's the kind of thing that I use as an example of no, that doesn't count, because that's literally 15 minutes of me sitting in my basement on my phone. So, and I think a number of us will have those. And as Mr. Wilson said, this really is an honor system thing to begin with. That's where I'd like to leave it into perpetuity, and hopefully the commissioners that follow all of us will be as honorable as we are. And we just make the right choices and use common sense. And I actually think, kind of knowing how most of this board is made up, Mr. Captain, I don't know you that well, but I kind of know you well enough through my dad and mom, is that you're a pretty honorable guy, and I just can't see us taking advantage of this. So it stunned me if the 5 of us did. But again, Mr. Wilson and I talking, I said, I'm not worried about the 5 of us. I'm worried about the next 5 and the next 5. With that, Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. One, under your paragraph 4, where you say the Cass County Zone Board, I wonder if you should just clarify that a little bit and say Cass County Human Services Zone Board. I believe that that's the official name, and you know, we have an ET zone area. I don't know, just so it's not confusing to somebody exactly what kind of, you know, is it the Planning and Zoning Board? You know, that it's actually the Human Services Zone Board, just for clarification. And then my other comment was, it seemed a little confusing to me about the scheduled or impromptu meetings with county staff or constituents would not be paid as per diem. I understand a phone call wouldn't be, but I've had, I've put in plenty of times with our legal team when there's been potential personnel issues. I've had to testify. I don't know, those seem to me, I'm not quite sure that why that's excluded. Just kind of thinking back on, especially as chair, the types of meetings that you may find yourself attending, certainly public meetings where your presence, you may be called upon to make a statement or not. Certainly there can be any number of meetings like that. And you do mention the legislative business meetings, but I'm thinking of all the meetings I took to St. Paul, even though it wasn't legislative, and same thing with DC. So just some comments. I don't know if we need to be any, dive into it any deeper, but I just wanted to make sure that that it was broad enough to cover some of those things that can really take up a lot of time.
Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sherling, as I'm looking back at it, and certainly would look for the rest of the board's input, but I see Commissioner Sherling's point exactly, and I think with the if there's a consensus that the last line in there is agreeable, that the 1 hour is some kind of a sort of a demarcation line of what's in or what's out. I think the line that Commissioner Sherling just referenced of scheduled or impromptu meetings could go away, and the end result would be essentially the same. That's my own input. Take that or leave it for whatever you like.
Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherling and Mr. Wilson. I think about that, some of these as well, because, since we passed this back in our budget meeting, I thought, how are we going to implement this? And I think Chair Peterson kind of hit it on the head. It's like kind of an honor system. We got to kind of figure out, this is year one of a new system for us, and I think it's going to be live and learn a little bit. We're going to have to say, well, does this make sense? And the chair is going to have to weigh in on some of these. I think, that's what we've got to go for guidance. I think if we have a question, and unfortunately we need to put that on the chair, but it's going to come down to, does this make sense? And if they make sense and it's within the intent of the proposal, then I think it makes sense, right? Because we're going to learn how this is supposed to work, and we're going to be able to evaluate over a period of time. It's not going to take us a year to figure this out, I don't think, but we'll figure it out, and we'll make adjustments as we go along, and nothing says we can't do that. So, Mary, you raised some really good questions, and it's going to be, how are we going to actually implement this? Because I don't think we can cover everything in the policy. I think it's going to have to be, we need to give some guidance, and we'll go with that. That's my thought on it.
Commissioner Sherling, then Commissioner Capitan.
Thank you. I agree. I think what Mr. Wilson was pointing out, removing that one, the third paragraph would probably just streamline this a little bit better. the other thing I just wanted to point out that it wouldn't be the intention, you know, to compensate anybody, I don't think, if they were simply sitting in on a meeting observing. You know, just for example, I have many times, just because I happen to be there, will sit in on a diversion finance committee meeting, for example. I'm not a member of that, but I would sit in and just see what's going on. So, you know, if my presence wasn't necessary to vote, I shouldn't be getting reimbursed for it. But
I thought you were just because we were awesome. Are you laughing? Why is everyone laughing?
Anyway, just that I like the idea of removing the third paragraph, and then I would, with that, I would move to approve this.
Commissioner Captain has a question. Commissioner, can you?
Yes.
You have a couple questions?
We had something like this when I was working with the state on FEMA projects, where we had to fill out forms. Is there going to be a form available either on online or on paper form? You can fill it out as to time, place, where you traveled to, blah, blah, what meeting you were at, and that would make it a lot easier, I think.
Chair Peterson, Commissioner Capitan, that is the intent with the electronic reporting, is that we would have something that you would go on to fill out, submit it, I'd take a look at it, show and hand it over to.
And then, and also is somebody will be critiquing this and say, well, wait a minute, this was not, you can't, you're not going to get paid for this portion, and just bring it back and say, hey, okay, fine, I didn't know that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Capitan, I don't see myself as in a gatekeeper role that I'm going to not allow one of these or anything like that. But that's where I see the reporting put it on a dashboard or something like that, so it's easier to self-police. And I think that's consistent with what you're talking about, is doing it on the honor system, and then if somebody sees an expense from a colleague that you have questions about, you certainly can ask me about it, and as well as asking the
yeah, it's essentially, since it's the first year and it's going to be a hit and miss type of deal, or where getting your feet wet. That's not.
Commissioner Breitling.
I'm assuming that we have to, in a motion, rescind the prior policy?
No,
This is a full amendment, correct, sir?
we wouldn't rescind it, we would amend it.
Yep.
It would be amending the motion. Or
Commissioner-
the policy.
And substitute the language that Commissioner Sherling has suggested?
Correct. Well, I mean, I'm going to look to Commissioner Sherling. Are you going to make a motion if I cut you off?
No, I would happy to make that motion to amend the current per diem policy with the suggested language minus the third paragraph.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Steen,
Yes.
Sherling,
Yeah.
Breitling,
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 5, Commission coronavirus update. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, a couple of items to ask for your attention on with regard to a COVID-19 update. The first one is an item you have discussed a couple of times before. I was contacted by Commissioner Breitling following the last meeting, and specifically you took a vote on one portion of this, of a sub-allocation of CARES funds received from the state that was potentially going to be sub-allocated to a number of the communities that we have law enforcement contracts for.
So I will go through my description. You may look to Commissioner Breitling for a motion simply as a Robert's Rules of Order procedure, because he would be looking to amend a previous motion. So that's sort of the housekeeping end of it. The content of that is, as you know, the state receives an amount of CARES Act funds allocated from the state based on a distribution agreement that was developed by the Association of Counties and the League of Cities and State Office of Management and Budget. That was a allocation that was that used as a vehicle law enforcement expenses over a given period of time. We have a couple of local partners here, municipalities that don't have their own police forces, but they do contract with the Cass County Sheriff's Office. And so that is how the figures for these particular communities was arrived at. We took the contract value over a 10-month period between March 1 and December 31 of 2020, and then multiplied that amount by 71%, 71% being the payroll portion of the Cass County Sheriff's 2020 budget. So that's how we arrived at that amount. I can go on into some of the other elements of my update today, but I would just wonder if you have any questions for me on this particular element. Again, this was, there were a number of conversations that were included myself, the executive directors of both the Association of County Commissioners and the Municipal League, and we were, there's nothing requiring you to sub-allocate in this manner, but I will say it is recommended by both associations, in addition to obviously the local entities that are making the request.
Questions for Mr. Wilson?
I will move on. The IT infrastructure upgrades, and I did have some updated information from Mr. Schmaltz this morning in regards to the way I described what we're asking for here in the table that I included for your review. You'll recall that initially the request was for $150,000 allocation for IT infrastructure upgrades. And what I've indicated in the memo is that is in fact upgrading to $183,500 based on continuing conversations between our IT department and state IT. What that amount represents is a cost over a 3-year period. The 2020 portion of that would be $111,500 with then additional $33,000 per year costs in the second and third year. And really what the crux of the issue is here is, rather than buying a group of equipment, a package that we would use to update our securities and our functionalities, this is a contract with the state where they and then if we buy something, then at some point we have equipment that has become obsolete or is no longer the most up-to-date version. If we go the alternative route that Mr. Schmaltz is suggesting, we not only have the upfront most appropriate and most functional equipment, but then we have that updated over the course of 3 years. So the
total cost over 3 years would be 150,000 lump sum versus 183,500. But that is also updating equipment and subscriptions and keeping the information and the equipment most current. The 1 year, the immediate cost is less at that 111,500, but then there are follow-up costs that, and the trade-off on that is that we don't have specific equipment with a shelf life. We have ongoing updates and new equipment. And as I'm giving you that description, I'm looking over at Mr. Schmaltz to ask if that is appropriate, and did I omit anything from that description?
Robert, I think you did very well, but I think the big picture of this is that we're turning this into an operational expense instead of a capital expense. So we go out and buy this thing directly for $132,000. I'm going to be back here in about 3 or 4 years and say we need to replace it again, right? So what we're doing is we're basically partnering with the North Dakota State IT department, and they're purchasing equipment. They have the same equipment throughout the whole state, right? So they get the buying power. They have their subscription costs are a whole lot lower than we would ever get to buying it on our own, right? So we're taking advantage of the state's buying power in quantity and basically getting a better system, and we're turning it into an operational expense rather than a capital expense, and it actually provides some benefit. And basically what we're replacing is our front door to our courthouse, right? So if we have network problems, a lot of times there's a lot of back and forth problems with these issues, and now we can actually work together a little bit better because we can both see the same equipment.
So the question I have is, how does spending $50,000 more save me $51,000? Because you're asking for a direct purchase of 132.1, state 183.5,
Right.
$50,000 difference. But if I can save $51,000 by spending $50,000 more, it makes sense. Right now, I'm just seeing us spend $50,000 more money. So
Well,
how do I save more?
Well, it's not all about the money, but what
Sure it is, actually.
the direct purchase is not like I said in my notes down there, it's not a direct comparison because there's all these, the hardware is kind of the cheap part. It's the subscriptions you have to have on this equipment, right? So when you're running a firewall, you have the physical equipment, but you also have to, you buy the threat protection subscriptions that manage, that, stop all the viruses and stuff from coming through, right? That's the expensive part. And so when we looked at buying it on our own, there was 3 subscriptions, 3 different threat protection levels that we're looking at. And that's what that 82,000 was over a 3-year period, right? With the state, we're actually getting like a 7-level threat protection subscription based on their enterprise-wide subscription. So it's not a if I didn't get a quote for, if I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison, that 3-year subscription would probably double.
So that's what I needed. I wanted apples to apples here, and what you're telling me is I'm not looking at apples to apples. I'm looking at apples and oranges. And that $51,000 void, the thing I'm looking for to justify expending more, is part of that subscription cost.
Right.
So you're arbitrarily saying the subscription would go from 82 to 160?
Yeah, pretty close, yeah.
Okay. Commissioners. Question. Mr. Wilson, anything further to add on this item?
Not specifically on the IT.
Yep, just on this item. Commissioners, anything in particular on this item? Okay,
Well,
Commissioner Steen.
I think I follow what was going on here, but under the direct purchase, it says 3-year subscription, 82,000. I assume then that's 82,000 for 3 years,
Yes.
okay? So I still don't know how you get to a savings, because
Well, if we wanted to, so we're dealing with so direct purchase came from a local vendor, right? And I don't think he's very happy that I'm going to the state to buy this. So, I mean, I could go back to him and say, hey, I wanna get a quote that shows me exactly what the state gets, right? And
isn't that what that's where I'm confused. Isn't that what you're doing? Because the annual service, when I'm adding this up, I mean, if you want that 3-year subscription, it's 108,000. If you want it the way this is put
okay,
together.
so
I mean, isn't that right? So 36 times 3 is 108. 108 plus the 75.5 is 183.5. So isn't
no.
side by side would be 108.5?
Okay, so the 82,000, if you want me to go back and get a
No, I'm
better
just trying to
quote,
understand
yeah.
it, Terry. That's why I'm just trying to understand it, the way it's
I just-
side by side, so that's why maybe some of us are very,
all right,
or
so,
confused.
That's why I said, show me the 51,000.
right, so if we went out and bought it, we're buying it for the buying power of Cass County.
33,273 for one.
No, the 82,800, right?
That's the subscription.
That's a subscription, that's the biggest thing,
Software.
yeah. Right, so we're using our buying power as a one agency, and we're getting, basically retail cost, right?
Okay.
So the state of North Dakota has enterprise licensing, which they get better pricing, right? So the direct purchase cost, 82,000, that is 3 levels of threat protection, right? And that's what we were, that's what we reported.
82,000 for 3 levels.
3 levels, right?
Right.
The state, the one through the state is 7 levels of threat protection.
108,000 for 7 levels.
Yes,
30, that's what we're talking about.
yes. So what I'm saying is, if we want to do a direct comparison, I would double that 82,000 number.
Because you're talking about the value for what you're spending. Is what you're
Correct.
talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
So then,
This is what we're getting to protect. You're buying, okay, the car on the left is a Chevy, the one on the right is an Escalade.
Yes.
so then my question, to be devil's advocate, if I may, Commissioner Steen? If we only need a Chevy, why would you, if you think we need an Escalade, why did you get a quote on a Chevy?
That's a good question.
Follow me, really?
Well, because we went to the direct purchase model first, and then.
Understood, but you follow
we had
my
that
question.
quote.
If we're advocating for spending more money because we get more protected,
Right.
why would you even bother with the Chevy? Just go, well, we need an Escalade, period, or my whole courthouse is gonna get hacked by the Bosnians, and we're gonna lose our infrastructure overnight.
Yeah, so the way the cycle would happen here is we kind of determined what we needed. We went to Robert and said, hey, we need to have 150,000 or 150,000 for this, we're gonna buy this widget, right?
Yep.
And then, once that was approved, we started looking at it and had some conversations with the state. So that whole conversation changed because now there's actually an operational advantage to buy it through them.
I mean, I get the volume discount thing,
Yeah.
but, so then defend the 3 levels versus 7. If the Russians are gonna show up and hack all our stuff, if we only have level 3, but boy, if that level 7, then the Russians can't do anything to us. What, you know what I mean? So sell me, knowing that it's getting to be a long meeting. Give me the minute and a half elevator conversation as to why I need 4 more levels of protection. Go.
I wish I could tell you that, but I mean, there's different subscription levels. And it's not just one subscription, there's a threat protection, right? So that one might just scan, you know, this one might just scan emails, and then you got another one that scans web traffic, right? And so all those are different subscriptions. The other thing that you like is that when we factored in the one from the state, what we're doing is we're actually going to replace another subscription that we're paying now. So that one's about another like $14,000.
That, you gotta lead with that stuff.
I know.
You can't get 20 minutes into it and go, hey, by the way, I'm gonna save you 15 grand.
A year.
Yeah,
I can redo this. I can go back to the
I think,
vendor.
I don't mean to delay this, but I think, Mr. Wilson, if you would agree, I think it would be prudent, commissioners, for asking Mr. Schmaltz to go back and rethink this presentation so we can better understand how we're saving money. And if it's see, now we're talking like a $35,000 savings, right? So it's getting to be, or greater expenditure. So it's getting to be a little more easy to justify. I'm struggling voting on this item
No,
right now.
I get it. I see where you get me confused on it, but.
Well, I'm not confused. I think I'm right, but
yeah.
you need to explain it to me as to why.
I
I'm
just
super
need to,
right.
I need to go back to the original vendor and say, I need
Give me
to
a comparable.
get me a
We
copy
need
of
apples
it.
to apples.
They might not like me asking that.
I'm sorry, you know,
No, I'll get that.
Okay.
I'll update it.
commissioners, is that okay? I don't mean to upset the apple cart here, but
Question, do we then want to delay this action until the next commission meeting?
I certainly would on that item. I mean, clearly we have a number of action items.
That's just the last part of the
Yep.
motion, Dewey.
I think we can keep chugging and we can still do quite a bit here. Mr. Wilson, keep chugging, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, there's one additional thing that I want to bring your attention to, and I think I'll do it by referencing the motion, and then I'll kind of back up from there. On the suggested motion there, if you permit me to just sort of walk through this, that move to approve the suballocation CARES Act funding to Castleton, Horace, Kindred, and Mapleton equal to law enforcement payroll costs. Consider that on its own, to allocate the funds needed to complete the jail intake expansion project. And the reason I'd be asking you to look at it in that manner is we had some question come up following the vote last time where there was language in there that all remaining funds were going to be directed to completing of that project. You don't need all of the funds to complete that project. And then update the cost of the negative airflow cells in the jail from 24,000 to 30,000. You approved a specific amount for that portion a number of months ago. It came in with an alternate that was higher, and I do want to correct a comment that we made building committee earlier today, that it did come in at 30,100. And I've reached out to Gene, Mr. Gardner. I believe the alternate that we accepted and that we used there was a when you had the strength of the pull of air back in from the new apparatus was going to cause a rattling or it was going to be audible if they didn't change the vents, and so they put a different type of vent on there. So that increased the cost. That's a long way of getting to. I'd like you to look at the table that is
Page 3.
Yeah, CARES Act, Cass County CARES Act funds. If you factor all of these in and chose to approve all of them, including the updated IT request, which I think I'm hearing is going to be put on hold for at least now. If you approved all of those, you would have approximately $942,000 remaining. So that's kind of backing into the motion with the logic there. And again, that's a lot, so I anticipate you might have some questions for me.
Commissioners, discussion or questions? Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. Robert, what is, I'm getting an echo. What are the restrictions put in place for spending that CARES Act funding?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sherling, there are essentially no restrictions placed on us as Cass County because of the distribution formula that was agreed to by the Association of Counties, the Municipal League, and the Office of OMB. Part of the guidelines from the federal government as that money was allocated to states and then further allocated to us is that we cannot place additional restrictions on any sub-allocations we make. So we cannot place, because we received the money with essentially no restrictions on it. And that's a change from originally, it had to be expended before the end of the year. It had to be, we had to apply for for specific projects, and then those were going to get a thumbs up, thumbs down. As that distribution process evolved and those restrictions went away, our ability to place any restrictions on sub-applicants also goes away.
But we really are using it for COVID-related activities, correct?
You are absolutely correct.
And you've had no requests from any of these other municipalities for any COVID-related relief, is that correct?
The conversation that I had most recently that included Horace and executive directors of both associations and representatives of the other three entities, they did not specify requests. They did not indicate what they would use the funds for.
Mr. Wilson, as a gentle reminder, when you and I were on a conference call with Brenton and then Mayor Peterson brought up a goodly number of expenditures. Horace's, and again, this isn't particular, doesn't mandate them to do this, but there were no shortage of examples Corey brought up without any thought at all.
Absolutely. Of
expenditures regarding COVID-related expenses. So it's not to say that they aren't going to, Commissioner Sherling, because like I said, during one conversation that Mr. Wilson and I had, Mayor Peterson had a plethora of things, all COVID-related, that were needed things. My word is always needful, right? So I used that with him too. Are these needful expenditures? He said, absolutely, we're doing it right now. So will that preclude him? You can say it's commingling of dollars, so is it really COVID or not? Who knows? But I know for a fact Horace is allocating resources, and it's not tens of dollars, it's thousands in terms of getting people to work remotely, et cetera, that they have expenses.
And how do the other municipalities handle their expenses? I mean, they're not receiving anything. Right.
And that's kind of the rationale behind this. If I'm understanding your question correctly, that's the rationale behind the League of Cities and the Association of Counties asking us to do this, because Fargo, West Fargo, school districts all got direct allocations from the state. And again, Commissioner Sherling, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I think I am. But these other small communities that are of scale do have expenses, but there's no way to get them the resources like the bigger cities, and certainly the school districts is the best example. There's no mechanism for a Horace, a Kindred, a Mapleton to get any resources. So this is the way to do it. Does that make sense, Commissioner?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Wilson, anything further?
No, I would, again, understand it's somewhat of a complicated motion that we have before you, and it would look for, because it was before you previously, would look for somebody who had voted in the affirmative, Commissioner Breitling to make a motion in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order.
All eyes on you, Commissioner.
I asked him to prepare the motion for me.
Oh, there,
And,
okay, well, there you go.
and I move to approve the suballocation of CARES Act funding to Castleton, in the amount of $99,148.54. Forest in the amount of $99,148.54. Kindred in the amount of $24,787.29. And Mapleton in the amount of $13,286.46, equal to the law enforcement payroll costs, to allocate the funds needed to complete the jail intake expansion project, update the cost of negative airflow cells at the jail from $24,000 to $30,100. And that would be the extent of my motion today.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Point of order, Ms. Warden, the second can be anyone, correct? It just needs to be the motion. Correct, okay, so,
To bring it back to be reconsidered needs to come from somebody from the majority and.
but not the second?
No.
Correct, okay, thank you, just clarifying. So we have a motion, Commissioner Captain, second, discussion on the motion. Commissioner Sherling.
I'm sorry, I had neglected to lower my hand.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Steen?
Yes.
Capitown?
Yes.
Sherling?
Yes,
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, anything further under item 5?
Nothing further. Thank you,
Okay,
Commissioner.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Wilson before we jump on to 6? Outstanding. 6, flood diversion, transfer 6, sales tax dollars. Mr. Montplaisir, I saw you on here. You still here? There you are.
Mr. Chairman, you have the suggested motion in front of you to allocate dollars to the FM diversion project in the amount of $1,312,542.63. And that's 94% of our sales tax money for the month of October, received in November.
Commissioner Steen.
So moved.
Here, a second, please.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote.
Commissioner Sherling?
yes,
Breitling?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Steen?
Yes.
Capitown?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Montplaisir, item 6B.
Item 6B is kind of a routine thing that you do every month or every couple months. And then again, it's not routine because you see the dollar amount is rather large. And this is a result of a renegotiated cost share agreement with the State Water Commission that I believe Mr. Paulson had a big part in. And what this is this is allowing a lot of the reimbursement for administrative costs that were limited before by the 10% cap. So the amount of the request is $36,169,631.64, which will greatly help our cash balance at the Diversion Authority.
Commissioner Steen.
Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the chair to sign reimbursement request 109 in the amount of $36,169,631.64 to the State Water Commission to distribute funds to the Metro Flood Diversion Authority according to the terms and conditions of Senate Bill 2020 for costs not previously submitted due to the 10% cap on engineering, legal, and administrative costs.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitown?
Yes.
Steen?
Yes.
Sherling?
yes,
Breitling?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes. Motion passes. Item 7, vouchers. Commissioner Breitling.
I've had a chance to review the same, and I move the approval of the list submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Atherton,
Yes.
Sherling,
Yes.
Brightling.
Yes.
Motion passes. Committee reports, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, a couple of things. Had a conversation with the court administrator last week, and I was advised that we will be, the county will be getting reimbursed for the cost of a number of hearing aid devices that you purchased for the courts back in, I want to say, April or May, when the court was looking to restart, and they were struggling with how to bring in a jury pool and socially distance. There were a number of purchases the court made. There was also a number of purchases that the county made. One of those was for these hearing devices, so that the essentially a little microphone, so potential jurors could speak and the court recorder could hear those clearly. That was a purchase in the amount of roughly $22,000 that the county initiated, and will be getting reimbursed by the court for that purchase. So thought you would appreciate hearing that. As you are aware, we have a joint legislative meeting with Fargo and West Fargo scheduled for the morning of December 18th. Definitely want to hear your input of items you'd like to have discussed that meeting. We are very conscious, working among the entities, that we want to have the ability to talk collectively about things that are important to all of us, but also things that are important individually to each organization. And we want to organize that so we're not repeating ourselves, and we're making most efficient use of our time. So if you can reach out to me individually with some items, or if you want to have that discussion now, certainly feel free. I've got a couple other items that I'll move on to unless you want to have that. I'll keep going. The downstairs cafe, Anthony Bachman, who operates the cafe down there, has reached out, and as well as expressing interest to continue into 2021, is also offering to expand his menu and also offer some breakfast items. And I thought that was certainly a good gesture and something that would be appreciated by our employee group. The reason for this is that he no longer has a lease agreement with a local restaurant space that he had been using, and is looking to do some catering out of the location downstairs. I think it's a change in the relationship there, but I think in the end it gets better variety, more options for our employee group, and I see that as a benefit. I see, Chair Peterson, you have some comments or questions for me.
Yeah, so a quick question. I think it's a good thing, because and Mr. Wilson and I talked when I was here on Tuesday. I would have happily walked downstairs, except they had some weird thing for lunch. And if they just had like food, I would have simply walked downstairs. Instead, I'd have to traipse off somewhere else anyway, or skip it. But, and this is maybe some inside baseball stuff, I'm curious. Are they just not renewing their lease, or did they get kicked out?
Over at the
Yeah.
at the VAP.
Yeah.
I think he chose to leave because of the COVID and just being closed and.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and not to say kicked out in a bad way. I mean, like, they're repurposing the space for something that can make them more money, is the direction I was going there. Okay. So I think it's a great thing. I know I'll eat here more, if they have more stuff rather than the weird pita sandwich.
One other element to that is occasionally they would ask to be in the facility a little longer if they're working on catered items. I have worked through this with Building and Grounds, with the Sheriff's Office, Court Security. They're aware of it. We'll make sure that they have the card access they need. No doors will be propped open, nothing like that. But I know Court Security staff expressed some real enthusiasm for the additional menu items. And then lastly, I was considering scheduling a personnel overview committee meeting, for the, Monday, of your next commission meeting on the 21st. Still was on the fence of a second issue I would deal with there, but there was some reference to a personnel policy, in the Human Service Zone Board meeting earlier today. And if there were a desire from the board to schedule that at that time, I would take note of that, or if you don't feel that's needed, I understand. I was curious what the thought was on that.
Commissioner Steen.
I can reply, okay, I can only speak for myself. We've got plenty of stuff going on the rest of December. Really don't need any more meetings if we don't need to have them at this time.
I don't see it, honestly, Robert, and Mr. Wilson, I don't see a need for it. What am I missing?
I was considering scheduling that meeting as I'm continuing to work on both the department head performance evaluation process. Also, at the last department head meeting when that was discussed, there was a suggestion that could be helpful really on a county-wide larger scope.
Agreed.
And so I'm working through the forms and the process and would want to have that for the employee overview committee, just to have the opportunity to discuss what would be coming forward with a goal of implementing that as of the first of the year. And so if I was going to have that meeting for this other purpose, could utilize it as well. But that's just wheels turning in my head more than anything else. Okay.
I guess I need to know, Robert.
Okay. Without further questions, that would conclude my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Brightling.
I have no report to give today.
Thank you. Commissioner Shirley.
No report, thank you.
Ms. Peters, I believe you're in for Mr. Burdick. Oh, I think she's gone.
I am. No,
There she is. Hey there.
yes, I don't have a whole lot. I think some of you are aware that, well, as you know, our office was approved to hire another attorney in 2020-21. And we have made some adjustments and moved people around. And as of January of 2021, that person stepping into that civil role will be me. So I am looking forward to working with all of you on commission issues and things like that. So that's all I have.
Hot darn. Welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Anything further, Ms. Peters?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Standing. Commissioner Capitan.
I don't have any actual committee report, but I will for your own information. On November 18th, I went out and I visited at the request of a new state senator from Castleton, Mark Weber, and Representative Brandy Pyle. I met with about 21 township officers, and that represented over 12 townships, both in Emden and Page, North Dakota. And just more or less introducing myself, that type of thing, and getting a feeling of what they're concerned about. That was about it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Welcome. Commissioner Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a kind of an overview. Thanks to all the rest of the commissioners and the rest of the zone board members for working through this whole process of trying to identify, what the zone board is supposed to do, trying to identify, what steps we need to take next, and volunteering to be on the zone board. I think we all did. But it was a process, and I know, working with Pearl, she appreciated all the input and the feedback. I think some of us, if not all of us, have had opportunity to have a short meeting with her, and she appreciated the meetings that she did have with the commissioners. So just thank you for that as portfolio commissioner in 2020. The other thing is I will be reaching out to each of you in the near term regarding some feedback as well for this Pearl. So expect something in the mail for that. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Montplaisir.
Well, most of you must have got your Christmas card by now. We mailed out 70-some thousand statements last week for a total of $352.5 million. And you'll be pleased to note that people started paying already today. Our phone was ringing off the hook. Early this morning, we've collected about 165 parcels already. So people are always anxious to pay. Normally, on the first day, we'd have a big long line in the courthouse paying. People who just want to get it out of the way, or people who want to go south. This year, they're finding other ways of doing it, either by dropping a check off in our drop box or by calling and doing an e-check. So it's going good. That's it.
Thank you. From my perspective, got a busy week ahead. We have Association of Counties, Commissioner Brightling. We have legislative after that tomorrow morning. You're aware of that, yes? Okay, surprise. You are on tomorrow at 10:30. I'm going to double check. That's on Teams.
Teams?
Yep, Teams meeting.
I will be providing that information.
I'm going to check right now.
I haven't had a chance to look at the computer today, so
I do not see you on the invite list, so, okay, I'm going to get on that here. I'll try to get that done tonight.
thank you.
So the intent is tomorrow.
And what meeting is that?
So North Dakota County Commissioner Association, I'm on at 8:30, and we have our legislative meeting, County Commissioner legislative meeting at 10:30. So that is tomorrow, and then day after that, I have Insurance Reserve Board, which is fine. We're supposed to be 2 days. Now we're down to 1 because of the COVID thing, which is fine. We have an EDC meeting on Thursday, our non-busy meeting because we're meeting busy. And then we have our first trial run at our legislative committee meeting, which is the local people, which I'm thinking right now is just a handful of us. That may or may not grow. It's myself, the mayors, Joe Paulson, Attorney Shockley, Mr. Wilson, and the other administrators. Does anyone else want to be involved in that? Okay, if you don't, you're not going to hurt anybody's feeling. Okay, I'll let you know what's going on, so don't worry about that. That will be the meeting. The intent of that meeting will be, I think League of Cities is at 1:30 or 2:30. The County Commissioner Association ledge meetings are always at 2:30. Goes for an hour, so at 3:30 we'd kick that off. So if you come to the courthouse on Friday, you'll just be on the conference call for that. Again, well, I suppose it'll be Teams meetings, but in the past, at the courthouse. Again, we'll keep you appraised of all that. And diversion meetings coming up here. I have the refugee meetings next, so the 17th, Thursday. I'll be going to that as well. So yeah, busy couple weeks, and that's fine. Enough. Correspondence.
There is none.
Outstanding. Next one.
Adjourn.
There a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Cool. Got stuff for me, Ms. Warden? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
This back? Okay, thank you.
The hell is the rubber ducky about? Yes, I did. Well, I didn't want to sign it before you start watching me.
I'm watching it.
Should have that back.
I just didn't have him.